Welcome back to NamesConOnline. Here's your MC, Bill Sweetman.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the first ever NamesConOnline domain name conference being held virtually on this newfangled thing called the Information Superhighway, or some people used to call it that. If this is your first time attending a NamesCon event, welcome. And if you're a returning guest, it's great to have you back. This is the keynote track, and this panel session is The One That Got Away. I'm Bill Sweetman, president of Name Ninja, and it's my great honor to introduce the moderator of this session. He's funny, he's furry, and he's proudly vegan. He is Braden Pollock, owner of Legal Brand Marketing. Braden, the virtual stage is all yours.
Are you ready? Yeah! This is NamesConOnline. Please welcome your moderator, Braden Pollock.
Did Bill just call me furry? Really? Furry? That's what you're going with? Thanks, buddy. Called me vegan because he's the other vegan domainer in the industry. So, but, you know, okay. Let's bring on our panelists. This panel is called The One That Got Away. So let's bring in the guys that didn't get away. Amar, Adam, and Andrew. Hey, guys.
Hey, good to be here.
So this is the old school group here, whether you like it or not.
Some of us older than others.
Great.
Who
Some of us furrier than others too.
That's true. I'm way furrier than you for sure.
I got you here. We have an equally matched panel here.
Yes.
Hair and no hair. Diagonally.
I see that Amar and Andrew have the same barber, and Adam hasn't been to one.
No.
So we've been behind the scenes. We've been calling this the A team because you guys are all everyone starts with A, except me. I'm the B team.
Well, that's appropriate on more than one level.
Oh. Okay, so let's start with intros. Probably not necessary, but we're going to do it anyway. Amar, who are you? Why are you here?
I'm Amar Akuba.
Where are you? Because you've been traveling. You sold your place, and you're just traveling around for a long time now. So tell us where you are.
Yeah, right now I'm in somewhere very boring. I'm in Virginia, so nothing exciting. But I'm coming from a hotel room in Virginia, and here I am. So I've been in the industry for a long time, since 2002 or 3, I guess, and was co-founder of one of the first parking companies, Traffic Z. We had aftermarket.com, one of the earlier marketplaces, and we had agreed.com, licensed escrow service, and I'm a investor in domaintools.com.
All right. And Jason just mentioned that you two are building out proteinbars.com.
That's right. We're building out proteinbars.com and trying to get into a little more development, but I can't get away from domain names, and I'm trying to not let any of them get away now.
Yeah, and you keep trying. You got a big portfolio. How many names are in your portfolio now?
Altogether, like including investments with others, probably about, I don't know, 10. Not that big, nothing compared to these guys, but probably about 10,000 names.
Okay, all right. Adam, you've got more than that, right?
Yeah, probably. I shouldn't have. I probably should get rid of them.
That goes for all of us,
Yeah.
for sure. All right, so tell us your history. You've been around this game for a long time.
Yeah, I've probably been around longer than Amar, but maybe not longer than Andrew. I think Andrew's got us both beat. Yeah, so I have a portfolio of about 14,000 domains. My company is called Strong Inc., and that's all my domains are registered under that company. I also run a brokerage called evergreen.com with my business partner, Jen Sale. And I co-founded Domain Agents, Name Bio, trying to think. I think that's about it. But yeah, so I've just been a domainer. Been on quite a few of these panels before. So what else do you want?
That's all I'll come back to you.
Okay. All right.
So Andrew, I think there's a lot of people, some of the people that have been in the space for a long time know you, but I think the newer people don't know you. So why don't you give us some of your history and some of your highlights?
I've been in this since 1997, but I'm like 55 going on 30.
Wait, there was an internet in 1997? What
was that?
There was an internet in 1997?
Just about to start. And I actually keynoted Rick Schwartz's second traffic conference. So we go way, way back, and I took been in domains in various aspects forever, but took some time off from until I tried to go to NamesCon in January, and COVID got in the way of that, but we're back. So excited to be back. I've been involved with many, many, many category domains. I founded 2 businesses built on category domains, creditcards.com and insurancequotes.com, sold them both, and they're both market leaders. And I've been everything from a principal, investor, advisor, broker, buy side, sell side since, and doing some good stuff now. So excited to be back in the mix.
What is the most expensive name that you've ever been involved in acquiring or selling? You don't have to mention the name. You can mention, I want to hear the price. How about that? I imagine you can't mention the name with the price, but if you can, do that.
As a principal or as a broker? I mean, I helped broker the first sale ever of the infamous, I hate to even, somehow we'll lose our signal when I say it on this, and the whole show will go down. The first sale of sex.com, which was obviously the highest dollar sale. And I've had, I don't know, 14, 7 and 8 figure sales as different levels: advisor, seller, buyer, broker. I've helped buy, obviously for my own companies like Insurance Quotes, and kind of runs the gamut. But no one's going to top that sale dollar-wise.
And
fun fact, Andrew and I have a name in common. He was the first domainer to have beer.com. I'm the last domainer to have beer.com.
This is correct.
Full circle.
I hope you have the outcome we had.
Yeah, or better.
I hope you have the outcome we had. That's probably my second biggest. So,
and Kate just sold one of your names, Andrew, right? Can you mention that?
Yeah, it was awesome. So, we talked, you've been in the intro, you said some of the newer people don't know me. And I know a lot of people privately, but I had not been to the conferences. And I had been following Kate Buckley, just kind of through the industry. I hadn't got to know her at all, really. And I was just really impressed with the way she was approaching the world and her outlook and how she did things. And I reached out to her last year and said, hey, even though I've sold 11 or 12 or whatever 7-figure domains as a broker, I'm a little emotionally attached. You want to give chocolate.com a try? And she, pulled off an awesome 7-figure sale. Yes, confirmed, a good 7-figure sale. Yeah. That can be confirmed here. A year ago, or I don't know, it's something like that, February of 19, or I don't remember the exact time. But yeah, it was great.
I think it was. Was it last year? I thought it was early this year. Was it?
Dude, COVID's here, man. I have no idea where we are in the world right now. I think maybe it was February of this year. Yeah, that makes it was February 20. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was February 57th is when it sold, that date.
And exactly, and great shot. I mean, yeah, it was just great to, my instincts was right on Kate, and we're doing some other stuff together now too, which is good.
All right, so this panel is called The One That Got Away, and I'm gonna start with my story. A friend of mine. This is the earlier mid 90s. And I was talking to a friend of mine, one of these geeky guys that was into computers and would email people, right? And he said, "What do you think of this of these domain names?" I'm like, "What about it?" He said, "Do you think they'll ever have any value?" Of course, I said, "No. Nobody even uses them, right? I mean, they're just names. They don't go anywhere." And he's like, "No, but don't you think someday, here's an example." And he types in smile.com. He's like, look, this is available. And it's whatever, you know, $30 or whatever it was back then. He's like, smile.com. Don't you think this would be a good domain for like a dentist or something? And I said, nah. And that was the end of it, right? I mean, it was available for hand register. Smile.com. That's the one that got away from me. I didn't see it then. I didn't see it. And I think recently, I told this story to Morgan Linton, and apparently at some point in the recent past, he was involved in the sale of that name, coincidentally. So it's kind of funny. Amar, I'm sure you've got a bunch.
Yeah, I'm going to do it a little different. You know, these guys probably have much better stories about the one that got away than I do.
Okay, then I'll go to them.
Yeah, why don't you? But mine, I'll talk. So one, I mean, there's been countless, right? Like I said, that's why today I'm very active, and if I really, really like a name, I'm pretty aggressive in going after it. But this was back in 2003. There was a name, I was bidding on a 2-letter name, was DL. And it was in an auction. And I think it went around a little over 200K, I think, something like that. And I liked the name a lot. It was a 2-letter. I didn't have any 2 letters. And I kind of just was going back and forth. And I finally just let it go. I was the second highest bidder on it. And,
listen,
you know, so
we can put a more positive spin. You were the first place loser.
Correct. If you ain't first, you're last. So I was last on that one. But what I wanted to talk about was more about the lesson that could be learned from the one that got away. And what I think is the important thing to take from those is you should zoom out rather than focusing on the particular loss. You should zoom out and look at what's happening in the environment that caused you potentially to lose that. For instance, in that case, if I had zoomed out and I would have said to myself, wow, these 2 letters are starting to heat up more. And I should, even if I lost DL, I should now go and actively pursue other similar names, or try to understand the trends that were causing this person to outbid me. Because prior to that, I don't think they were going for, they weren't as hot, right? So, so it just didn't hit me right away. And I wish that the bigger thing for me was not losing that name. It was not zooming out and actually analyzing what happened and why did I lose that name. So I think what's important for people, they should be thinking about is focusing more on big pictures, and don't dwell in the loss so much of whatever it was that got away. Don't focus on the past. Look to see what's happening now, and then look to see how you can capitalize that on the future. Because you don't always want to be chasing, right? You don't want to be chasing trends. You want to try to figure out what's coming. And I think you can learn a lot from the one that got away. And I bet you if we analyze what Adam and Andrew are going to talk about with their one that got away, or in your case, Smile, right? To just kind of think about what is happening that is causing this particular event, right? Or that's causing these, in the case of DL, that's causing this other person to outbid me. So I think that, to me, that's the bigger thing. And because I've had so many ones that got away, not just domain names, but businesses that I could have bought or investments that I could have made. And if I had just, whenever I just zoom out and I say, okay, what happened here? And I analyze it, I'm able to take that loss and parlay it into much, much bigger wins than I would have had with just that one.
Well, the loss is like the opportunity cost, right? If you didn't buy it. But what about all the names or businesses or investments that you did not pull the trigger on and it was the right move? So it's hard to say.
Sure, but I would say, so the loss, really, it's just one way to look at it. But if you actually, again, take the lesson from that loss and you apply it, I actually think it becomes a win.
Silver
or it
lining.
can be. Yeah.
You are the silver lining guy.
Yeah.
Good vibes only. What was that name you just bought?
Yeah, that's the one.
Was it good vibes only?
Mhm.
Adam,
Yes.
one that got away, man. Tell us.
Oh, I've got too many. You know what? I had a story I told recently about usedcars.com, and you know, I was poor and not poor, but I mean, I was living small time. Let's just say I was playing small ball, and I came across usedcars.com. Managed to get the owner on the phone. I remember where I was, and you know, the story on that one, I lost it. It was 50 grand. And I think when I retold the story recently on Josh.co podcast, I talked about how that was an opportunity. I didn't realize now at this time we've got domain capital that we can buy a name like that if we don't have 50K.
For those that don't know, Domain Capital lends money on domain names.
But I got to thinking back, you know, I've been around buying domains, you know, since about 2000-ish. And another one came to my mind, and this story, this was before there were domain conferences. It was the very first kind of get together of domainers in LA. None of us had met before. We'd all been talking online, mostly not through video, just mostly through chat windows and email. And I had actually been working with Rick Kirkendall, who is the owner of Namecheap. And at the time I was kind of brokering names for him. He was buying names and I was buying names, but he was buying a specific niche that I kind of wanted to steer away from. And I found this domain. It was MILF.com, and American Pie had gotten popular in 1999, and the term MILF hadn't really been talked about a whole lot. And here MILF.com was sitting there unused. So I talked to Rick, and I had the guy on the phone, and you know, I managed to get the guy, you know, to sell the domain. And we're talking about it around this time at this conference. And a group of us all decided to go out after the conference, and we're in a cab ride. And I elbow Rick and I say, "Hey, we should talk to these guys about this one that got away, because it got away from us." And there were, I was just trying to recall this in my mind because this happened in around 2002, but there were 5 people in the cab, and all 5 of us were going after the name at the same time. And one guy got it, and the guy was in the cab ride. And he said the name paid for itself in a couple days. So, you know, this was at the time when, you know, there in the adult space, there was a lot of affiliate programs, and it was quite easy to make your money back if you had a domain with traffic. Obviously, that domain had quite a bit of traffic. But recalling that story, it's been a while since, and I talked to a couple of the guys about it every once in a while. And it's just like Amar said, it's just an example of how the space at that time was still, you know, if that name wasn't being used or even acquired in 2002, it just seems kind of absurd to think of that. But I don't know. I'm with Amar. There's great learning opportunities from the ones you missed. Things change, you know, like I said with the used cars case, you know, now there's financing that I could have gotten that name that way. With the example with MILF, they didn't pull the trigger quick enough. You know, it was just a matter of 5 guys were all going after it at the same time. I've had people email me and say, "Hey, good score on a name that I got just recently that I thought I was the only one going after it." I've had clients that I broker for, I'm doing the buyer brokerage for them, and they say, you know, I tell them, "Well, you know, somebody else is offering more than you." And they're like, "Oh, you know, that's BS. There's no other buyer. It's just me and that guy." And I'm like, and I've had clients lose domain names because they thought they were the only buyer. So I think one of the lessons for me is just like, you're never the only buyer. There's always, at this point in time, you're definitely not the only buyer. And make the move. If you've got a deal that you're just kind of hemming and hawing about, you just pull the trigger. So
that's what I do. I pull the trigger quick because I know that Amar's looking at it, and you're looking at it, and Elliot's looking at it, and Drew's already put in 3 bids, and
Right.
and people are pounding on Brent Oxley's door, and yeah, it's a competitive landscape at the moment. So used cars at the time was 50 grand. You didn't pull the trigger on it. And MILF.com, what was that price? Do you remember?
I talked to the guy. We had offered 2,500, and I think
2,500.
Yeah, I think it was $2,500. Yeah. And I just talked to the guy that bought it. I just texted him right before this just to kind of make sure that I was okay talking about it, because as probably a couple of you know, he's pretty private. And he said he thinks he bought it for 10. So, but you know, all 5 of us in the cab ride were just blown away that, like, how could this be? Like, but again, like Amar said, like, it showed the trend that all of us were going after the name at the same time. And we just all were in this little bubble, or I'm sorry, this isolated, I guess, bubble, whatever. But we were all isolated from each other in the sense that we just thought we were just solo on our own here in a new territory that we thought we were the only ones exploring. It's just so far from the truth. And the same thing recently, like Bitcoin names are bubbling up, and the name I was referring to was a Bitcoin name that I was involved in, and there was another guy. It took me ages to get a hold of this domain owner, and there was a language barrier issue, and I had to hire a Chinese interpreter and all these things. And this other person was right on the tail of the name, and it was a Booth brother, so you can expect these kind of things now. So make your moves quick.
There was a name, ignitioninterlock.com. I mentioned it. I was willing to pay 75 grand for this name, and I got the guy on the phone, and the who is was wrong, but I had to skip trace the guy, and I got a hold of him, and nobody else truly was trying to buy the name. It's also kind of a niche name, and I ended up buying it for $2,500 because I wouldn't come up with the first number, and so I was thrilled. I ended up developing it. I sold it as a business because it was developed into a directory, but I got $1.25 million for it a few years later. It just, they're still out there. There's some recent examples of that, of a hand registered name that just sold for $300,000 after a couple of years. So it still happens, but the stories from a long time ago are the really interesting ones. And Andrew, I know you've got a few of them lined up. So let's hear some of those.
Well, the one that got away, kind of like Adam said, there's certainly been more than one over the years. There's been plenty that haven't, which has been good, right? We balance them off. And I do think Amar's point is really, really good, and it's going to be relevant to my little story here too. So in 2005, I saw this trend, which is what I kind of try to do, coming, and I'm like, wow, we got to see if that domain name's out there. This is going to be huge. And this was actually, I don't know if you guys know this or everyone watching, but before Twitter became Twitter, Evan Wilson had a podcast company called Odeo. And he basically turned it into Twitter, shut it down, paid all his investors in Twitter and stock, and turned it into Twitter. Good move. But back in that time, I saw this kind of, the podcast was coming, and went out and acquired, we acquired podcast.com and podcasting.com in about 2005, maybe. And wow, what a great name. This is going to be the biggest thing. And we took it a step further. We actually decided to develop it. I had a friend here in Boston who was a very successful 2-exit entrepreneur already and wanted to be the CEO and saw the plan. And so he came in with his team to lead it, and he put in a significant amount of his own money, 7 figures, and we raised another $3 million, and we did business with Rob and Domain Capital, who are good friends, and to get the domains, and started down this operating development path in 2005. Well, the CEO cut this deal with Motorola. Anyone know what that is? Motorola? To be their podcast technology, I suppose, audio programming technology in all their handsets, and big contract, and tons of time and energy and effort and meetings, and 195-page agreement, and looked great. Everything looked great, and then a couple things. Motorola very quickly became obsolete, and the contract became obsolete, and I own a platform today that is kind of podcast on steroids. So it's 2020, and right now podcasts are exploding. 15 years we're winding the clock here. We were way too early. And podcast literally fizzled out to the point that I even thought the domain name, it may not just be a word, it may just be a word that goes away, right? Like it was this new word, it wasn't a dictionary word. It was created around an entire industry, and the industry just died, dead, gone. So was this business with Motorola, and end up as the flip side of when you use leverage to buy a domain name. And again, I love the Domain Capital guys. Great way to buy a domain unless it doesn't go right. So they took the domain back, and we moved on. And fast forward about a year ago or less, our buddy Drew sold the domain name to Amazon, and podcast.com now is an Amazon.com asset. I don't know exactly what they paid. I don't know the details of the deal, but I'm sure Drew didn't give it to them for free. And I'm sure it was a nice outcome. And, it was the one that got away, but there wasn't a whole lot we can do, right? I mean, we were just literally 15 years early.
Hey, Andrew. So, I mean, obviously you were early on that one, and I mean, I would think podcast.com is a 7-figure name. Podcasting.com is maybe a high 6-figure. If you guys agree with that.
7 to 8 on the podcast, I'd say.
You think so? You think that high?
Well, development-wise, I'm not saying to Amazon paid 8, but I do think it's worth that to the right player the way this market's going. Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you, what did you pay for podcast.com?
Well, it's, factoring in the purchase price for the domains, forgetting the borrowing the money from Domain Capital Online. The purchase price from the domains was, $150,000 for podcast and $125 for podcasting. So $275 for the pair. And look, we were early. We were just early, and I don't want to say the domain name.
But you had the name. If you would have just held on to it.
If we had held it, but you know what? I'm usually right, and my strength is seeing down the road trends of what's going to become really hot. I saw sports betting 6 years ago, and I'm well positioned, right? I truly thought the word might go away. Like, that's how dead. I mean, it was an invented word. It wasn't a generic word per se. It was a generic word that had just been invented into that year. Basically, we grabbed it, and then when the industry died, I just didn't know if it would be called a podcast again down the road, and it is, and it's not going away anymore. And
that's a good one that got away.
I would say, Andrew, you probably overpaid at the time, right, for those names. Obviously, in retrospect, now they're worth magnitudes more. But that's a good example of you saw a trend and you were willing to go get it, right? And I think that's a great. I don't believe
we overpaid at the time. I do. I don't know. I tried. I feel like I'm a pretty good buyer. So I don't. I mean, but look, I don't think you may not remember how hot it may have been hotter then than it was now.
Really? Okay.
Now it's just accepted and mainstream and part of society and part of what we do every day and ingrained. Then it was like going, remember convergence? For those of us who go back even earlier, like convergence of television and the internet in the 90s was like, oh my God, it's going to be here tomorrow. Well, that took 22 years. And I don't want to say the domain name, but I was just helping somebody try to sell a domain name for very high upside of 5 million, between 5 and 10, and a domain, incredibly valuable short domain in a space that is just like podcasting was then. It's a space that was crazy hot and now is struggling because adoption is taking longer than they thought it would be. And I want to protect the domain's value here by not saying what it is, but I bumped into is all these companies that raised a lot of money, went public, and they're struggling and they're dying on the vine because they're too early. And in 10 years, this domain is going to be worth 100 million, literally, as a domain. 100 million. I mean, 2-letter, just unbelievable. So, coming back to your point, Amar, sometimes you have to look. I think when you say you look and learn from these things, it's good to identify trends early, and maybe when you do, maybe we shouldn't have developed so fast, right? Maybe we should have let it materialize and just sat on the real estate, right?
Yeah. Well,
Own the
so
domain.
I was complimenting. I was saying that
Why not?
even if you did overpay, which you're saying you didn't, that's okay. So we can, regardless though, you saw the trend and you said to yourself, I don't really mind if I'm overpaying. I'm going to go get it because I see the value, the future value is much greater than the present value.
Look, let's just hope that we all have ones that got away, but lucky enough, there are plenty that we didn't get by us, right? That we did end up acquiring, and we've all done well in this space. So thank God for the domain industry. And Andrew, Adam, Amar, thanks for joining us on this panel. You're all old timers, so old that you all need to go and nap now. So
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
let you do nap, and then probably dinner because I'm sure it's almost 4 o'clock where you are. So thanks for staying awake and joining us, guys.
Been a pleasure.
Right.
Thanks. Good job, Braden. Good job, Bill.
Good to see everybody.
Great job. Thanks,
too,
everyone.
Amar.
So that is the end of the one that got away. Fantastic session. Please tell all your friends and enemies about that one. So although Braden and the panelists can't see all of you, please join me in giving them a round of applause for being with us today. Yay, Braden and the 3 A's.